Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host, Alex Sashlow. This week, Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic primary in New York City. What does it mean? Be careful, folks. I kind of think everybody's going insane. And a new Pew report has some more insights on what happened in 2024. Would turnout have helped Harris? Let's see what the data says. Alex, where should we get started?
I kind of just want to have you say new Pew Zohran Mamdani, new Pew Zohran Mamdani every day. I can't even do it. Yeah.
Zohran Mamdani, new Pew Zohran Mamdani. Okay,
it's the new Pew.
It's the new Pew. Yeah.
Let's start with Zohran. I'm just going to sum up some stuff for you that's been said online, and then I just want you to cut loose. For those of you who read along with us, Joe put a piece out in Lincoln Square that everyone should read. That gets a little more into this. And I first of all should say off the bat to our listeners, we are in no way taking away from the fact that he ran a kick-ass campaign and was super fun. It was a kick-ass campaign and super fun, and there's a lot to learn there. But there's also a lot not to learn there. Right. So let me just sum up what's been said online. Getting stuff like New York swung right in the presidential election, but just nominated a Muslim socialist for mayor. This country isn't getting more right-wing. People are just fed up with cowards who don't stand for anything or don't care about making anyone's life better. You know, it's like people taking like message out of this. And so, Joe, my question for you is like, is it messenger is more than message, or is it just, or should we realize that New York is its own thing?
This is one of the dumbest things I've seen in a long time. I mean, just insane. Because you can learn almost nothing from a mayoral primary in any city in America.
Especially New York, but any city. I agree.
No.
Any
New
city.
York, Chicago, New Orleans, Atlanta.
This happened in LA last year, 2 years ago.
Houston, Austin, all of them. They're, Portland, Oregon, fine. Des Moines, Iowa. I don't care. It's like, no, you can learn. First of all, primaries almost, literally, if you think about it. So, okay, we had MAGA in 2018. They nominated a bunch of crazy MAGAs who got the nominations. And then a lot of those folks promptly went out and got creamed in the general election. I mean, a primary win, any primary win, it's important. By the way, he ran an incredible campaign. It was a tremendous upset.
We'll get to that part. Yeah, but we're separating. He ran a great campaign, and then the world looking at it and reacting and going like insane people.
Everything's changed forever. No, you can't. There's city-specific issues, turnout quirks, all that stuff, but that's not the point. The point is, pick a primary. A primary tells you nothing about what that message will do in a general election. And I would argue that if you're going to insist on looking at, nominees in the Democratic Party this year that may portend something about 2026 or 2028 even, I direct your attention to people like Abigail Spanberger, who's a nominee for governor in Virginia. Mickey Sherrill, the nominee for governor in New Jersey. Again, they're the nominee. That doesn't mean that mess. Great. They became the nominee of the party. They won that post. But the reality is that still says nothing yet about how they will do in the general election. Now, they're both doing very well. And I would argue that statewide candidates like them in places like Virginia in particular might tell you a little bit more about what a possible winning effort might look like. Battleground House seats or states like Wisconsin, Georgia, those places, the battleground states. And that look, there are tons of Democratic districts. The Tierney, Seth Moulton district in Massachusetts was a, very blue district. We had a fight in the primary.
Right. And by the way, the Republicans ran a great candidate in that race.
Yeah. And
Like,
Seth Moulton
was
won.
it to say? Yeah, he was a good dude.
Yeah. No, but Seth Moulton won, and Seth Moulton went on. In the end, it wouldn't probably have mattered. I mean, in terms of like what that message was great, and it did win that district, but it wasn't, didn't change the message anywhere else, is what I'm trying to say. So, my point is there are a lot of, the one thing I would say is, look, one primary means nothing. Now, if in primary after primary in these battleground states, battleground districts, in those primaries, if this message, if people pick up this message and run with it and win those primaries, that might start to tell you something about where the Democratic Party is going to go. I'm talking about in those districts, in congressional districts.
Yeah, I'm terrified of that, man. I mean, I wrote something about it today, but there's this really insidious class of, people are going to try to go replicate this, not because it's the right thing to do or the best way to win, but because you can make a huge amount of money trying to replicate this campaign 12 times in battleground races around the country. And
I agree with you. The thing to go to school on, and I said this in I think my piece. Look, the Howard Dean campaign. I ran the Howard Dean campaign. Our tactics were pretty much picked up completely by Obama. Not our message. They went to school on the tactics and they improved them. And I think that was important. Plus, let's just be straight. Obama was a better candidate, and he had and was a better one of the best messengers in the party ever, right? So that's not a hit on Howard. It's just the facts. But it was the tactics that they really picked up, made better, improved, that got them past Hillary Clinton, and actually, got them into the White House with that better message and messenger. And so, which was completely different than the message that Howard Dean, that's what I'm saying. So did he run an incredible race? Yes, he did. Was it a massive upset? Of course. The tactics that he used, where he was appearing, the podcasts and all of those tactics, every single Democrat across the country should go to school on what that campaign did and pick up some of those tactics that they think will work for them. But their message, the mistake would be to pick up that message. I mean, right. It may be, I'm sure in AOC's district, by the way, that message will do just great. And there's plenty of districts across America that message will do just great. And I'm sure that there will be a candidate for president of the United States in the Democratic Party who will run on the messaging clearly worked in New York. Whether that doesn't tell you, that victory in New York does not tell you that AOC running that message nationwide is going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. There will be other people out there, and they will be, pushing a different agenda and a different message, and one of them will win. It's definitely something that we all know somebody will run on. I just think trying to project, oh, wow, this means the party's going this way or the other way is not reality. And then the second thing is that could impact this is, how does he govern? In other words, he wins, he's the mayor. If the policies that he presented are implemented and work, that could end up being having an impact on other races across the country. But the primary itself tells you nothing. And first of all, Cuomo, even if you say, oh, well, the old guard versus the new, look, we're talking about a pretty flawed test case for even that, whether that even really happened, or had an impact. Obviously, energized young people, energized people who want to change. We all know that's out there. Cuomo was in that sense the perfect candidate to run that kind of campaign against, as a foil. And so, yeah, I mean, sure, in a primary, in some, primaries in for House races, that dynamic could come up again, and it may benefit that we may see candidates with this message actually come out ahead in those primaries. The thing is, I don't believe that those primaries are going to, I mean, that does not mean that message is in any way going to be a winning message in a battleground district when the stakes of our democracy are on the line. I don't think, ideology, I've said this before. No, that in those races, we have to embrace every independent Republican, Democrat who stand with us, bigger tent, widen it up, and try to broaden the coalition as much as possible to win those districts and take the House back and put the brakes on Trumpism. That's going to be much more important than any ideological tests or any of the other things. And by the way, I don't think that's what the Mamdani campaign was about, the ideological test. I think it was about a very local fight in a unique city in this country with very unique candidates like Andrew Cuomo and the problems he had, and others. And I just think, like, to try to extrapolate how that's somehow a big message for where the Democratic Party is going is just insane. But of course, everybody is going insane,
We've been doing this podcast too long, but I seem to recall us talking about when Eric Adams won the primary.
Yeah,
and having the same discussion about which way is the party going to lurch. Some of it is just, look, most of the money, a lot of the media attention is there. But I mean, first of all, at least it isn't Eric Adams again. I mean, yeah, we did Chicago. I got to tell you, man, putting a young socialist leaning person with almost no executive experience at the helm of a major city is not good.
It didn't work. Well, what I'm saying is,
here, my friend.
I'm talking about the politics of how it impacts the party. Pritzker is not it wasn't like, okay, what happened in Chicago made Pritzker suddenly lurch big, into that kind of messaging. No, he stood up and so that's what I'm saying. I don't think it has any impact. And you look at Spanberger in Virginia and Sherrill in New Jersey, they've both shown how to win tough races in purple territory without sacrificing principle. And I think that's what, their continued strength, how competitive they are, and how that is like more realistic window into the kind of messaging and coalition building. I think that Democrats are going to need to win the 18, 19 House seats that are going to be the most competitive.
Right.
There'll be plenty of messages of places where Mamdani's not just his tactics but his message he was projecting. Well, AOC's districts, there's several of them, but those are not going to be the ones that change the makeup of the House.
Yeah, I mean, and to put a bow on it, I mean, a couple of things. One, definitely rooting for him, because if he can pull off being a good mayor, good for New York, but it would be really nice to not have a high profile young progressive flame out. That would be a good thing. But
absolutely.
You look at again, I know we talked about Karen Bass a couple of weeks ago. I think she is bringing a very measured approach to Los Angeles and doing a great job there. We don't really talk about the mayor of LA very much relative to basically all the other big major cities in America. But you hear everybody make, MSNBC, what Zohran's win means for Democrats in America. Yeah. And it's like, take this, go run on what you want to run on, be unapologetic about it, be authentic, communicate, connect to voters in ways that other people aren't doing. Do all that. But do not think that the message is going to work anywhere else, literally anywhere else. It could, but if it does, it's dumb luck. It's not because it was the message.
Yeah, no, look, national elections, messages that actually swing and move the national electorate, they're won by building a big, durable coalition that can carry not just urban strongholds, but also the swing districts and the purple states. I mean, that's just reality. And so a primary in, like I said, in any city in the country, That's one part of the durable coalition that you have to build. But the messaging that pulls that one part in can also push away, and we've seen this, voters in some of the other places in and districts that we need to pull in. And by the way, are becoming more disenchanted with Trumpism and looking over and so this isn't taking sides in that messaging. It's just saying, basically, step back, look at this, realize that even the Spanberg, even the Mickey Sherrill primary, whatever message wins that, right, when she won it, doesn't mean that wins a general election in Iowa's 3rd congressional district. So it just doesn't work that way. Now, the tactics, how he projected, how he got that message, his messaging out, the platforms he was using, the tactics, clearly, not banking on massive television buys, things like that. By the way, the party should learn a lot of those. I would hope they would have learned them in the Dean campaign.
Should have doing a lot of work there, my friend.
Yeah.
They won't.
Anyway. But, the reality is that those House races in the 18 or 20 districts, this is why this is so important to get right. Those 18 to 20 House districts that are going to decide the fate, they're not going to just decide the fate of a party, but of democracy itself in America. So the message that wins or loses that battle will depend not on who can win a primary, but on who can build a wide enough coalition to win the general election in those districts. And that's a completely different animal than a primary anywhere, and particularly a primary in an inner city, in a major city in America. And it does remind me a lot of the Dean campaign, because we did lose. We lost our primary, we lost our fight. But as I said, the Obama campaign learned from our tactics, and with that better message and messenger, won 4 years later. I mean, again, literally did overturn the status quo in the party in terms of, I think everybody believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win that nomination at the beginning. But, every Democrat running in 2026 should look at the tactics of the Mamdani campaign and learn from them. But the future of democracy in the party will rest on their authentic ability, our candidates' authentic ability to grow a coalition of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. And yes, Republicans. Got to bring some of them over to win the House and stop Trump's attack on democracy while we still can. And I believe it all comes down to 2026. And that's why learning the wrong things or letting the punditry that knows nothing now. That's what's so crazy when you watch all the commentary. We now have people, God knows if they were ever in a campaign. It's so ridiculous, the things they're saying. Well,
we've got kind of a theme today, somewhat unintentionally. The whole, what should we do looking forward? Which, again, it's kind of where we wanted to take the show. But two Nates, Silver and Cohn, are two data Nates. We could have done a whole show on the data Nates, but we had some New York.
Please no.
Yeah.
Please no. Please.
But it broke me. Nate Cohn put an article out. He has a good newsletter diving into data, which I find occasionally useful.
Oh, is this the Pew? We're getting to the Pew thing. Okay.
Yeah, we're getting to Pew.
We're getting to the new data from Pew.
New Pew.
Okay.
The way he framed it, his headline was, "If everyone had voted, Harris still would have lost." Joe, I'm just going to ask you if you buy that argument. I kind of do.
Who the hell? Probably, but who the hell? So what? Who? One, who knows? Two, yeah, because the polling's always been so good about this kind of stuff. And three, you still get into the whole, she wouldn't have had any more time to reach those people or to undo the poison that was out there that the Trump propaganda machines and Elon Musk were pumping. So I think, getting into oh yeah, but if there'd been higher turnout, it wouldn't have changed anything. First of all, that's bullshit. So if Democrats had turned out 70,000 more voters in X state, they wouldn't have won. So that's a ground game thing. It's not like, oh no, if we had 100% turnout, well, we can tell you what would happen. First of all, that's not going to happen. What was happening was a lot of bragging going on about the most awesome get out the vote effort ground game in American history by a bunch of people who told us they had gazillions of dollars and were putting it into the best ground game in history, and didn't turn out the voters that they needed. So, when you get into like what would happen with a higher turnout, tell me we turned out 3% more Democrats. Maybe we win the presidency, right? Maybe we win the electoral college. So I don't buy it at all, actually. I know what you're saying about if you suspend all that and go, no, Joe, not just this group
in
or that
a vacuum. In a very, very specific vacuum.
If everybody voted, would she have still lost? Probably. But it wasn't. That doesn't mean it wasn't in their hands. It was in their ability. They had the ability to turn out in key states the numbers they needed and didn't, and therefore that didn't work, right?
So I think a way to maybe frame this that is a little bit more in reality is if turnout at the levels and how they broke, if you just multiply everything by 1.1, Trump still wins.
Of course. If you multiply everything by 1.3, Trump still wins. Right. You have to, it's a turnout differential that makes the difference. You have to,
the thing that did, I think there are a couple points from Pew that I definitely kind of raised an eyebrow. One of them was, among registered Democrats who stayed home in 2024, only 72% would have voted for Kamala. I think something like 89 or 90% voted for Biden in 2020. I guess my point, Joe, is there moving forward, is it safe to say that mobilizing, we can't assume anymore that just bringing out as many young people, as many infrequent voters, as many non-white voters is a good thing without doing a little more work on that front?
Right. I mean, that, look, you just said it. Among registered Democrats who stayed home, okay, forget it, only 72% would have backed Harris. Okay, ergo, if you have an organization that is geared to reach the Democrats, registered Democrats who are staying home and, really working it, knocking, calling, whatever, absentee vote, all this stuff, they would have, they would have voted for Harris if they turned out. It's not like some big, mystery there. We, in a presidential campaign, you call people, you identify them, and you ask them who they're going to vote for. And they tell you, I'm voting for, I support Harris. And then you ask them the next question, and this gets to how this really works. The next question is, do you intend to vote? Are you going to vote? Do you have a plan? And all the people who say, no, I don't really have a plan, I haven't really thought about it, you put in one bucket. And then you have this thing called hard count. Hard count is somebody who tells you they're going to vote for you and they are voting. They have a plan, they articulate it. That's your hard count. So your hard count and your soft count. It's all in the computer. It's all in the data. You know who they are. So at that point, you now take the resources that are necessary to go after the soft count. Those people who say they're with you, but they're not sure they're going to vote. And we now know from the Pew, the new Pew, that 72% of the Democrats who stayed home would have voted for her. So that does not square with, geez, if more people voted, we would have lost. What that says to me is, no, if you had a very strong party organization or campaign organization that was running the kind of campaign that that you're supposed to, and this, by the way, I think does get to the whole issue of Joe Biden getting out late and her not having a primary. or the Democratic Party not having a primary, because that's where that thing gets honed. What happens is you're in Iowa or New Hampshire, and I know Iowa's gone these days, which I thought was a big mistake, but doesn't matter. Those campaigns develop talent and skilled organizers who learn through the process of that primary fight how to do hard count, soft count, how to turn out, how to calculate it, watch it, target it, and move it. And the best of them, that's how Barack Obama wins Iowa and Hillary Clinton takes third. In other words, that campaign, that organization, that talent, that skill to understand hard count, soft count, how you do it, takes the entire process to the nomination, to the convention, to build not just the candidate getting better, but the organization developing that. Now, that muscle, I think, was atrophied within the party, right? Biden,
extremely.
Yeah, he didn't. We had no primaries. He was a done deal, and so that muscle was never flexed anywhere. His organization was probably been dormant for the most of the time he'd been in office. They're all in the White House. Even remember how reluctant any of them were to move to the campaign, even when it was obvious they were in trouble and they needed it. So that never got built, and so Harris gets it. And so, when people said, geez, she didn't have enough time to get her candidacy in gear, I think she had enough time on message and things if they'd actually not, just sort of fallen into the same old. But the real problem, the real thing that now is, I think the new Pew poll points to, that I hadn't really thought about that way, is that she didn't have a chance of a snowball in hell of turning out those voters because of the 72% that we're talking about, because there wasn't anything there. It had not been built over a 2-year primary season. And also the other thing that happens is those pieces all come together. So like a Mayor Pete's organization with Kamala's and Joe Biden's and everybody who ran in 2020, who are out there doing the best of them. I mean, the very best of them in each campaign then become, the key people in those states, right? Because you've been running South Carolina, which we're never going to win it in the general, but there are people in all those campaigns who've been doing hard count, soft count in South Carolina, know where everything is. Same in Iowa, Pennsylvania, all the key places where because you're fighting in a primary campaign, you can literally fight all the way to the end, all 50 states. I've done that. I mean, I've been in a bunch of knockdown, drag out Democratic primary battles. Mondale Hart went all the way to the last day. And you keep going. I mean, that happened, as recently 92 with Clinton, went much deeper into the states than people thought. And then the same with Obama and Clinton. That was a drag down all the way to the convention. He pulled ahead and had it. But my point is that her organization, his organization, all that muscle, organizational muscle, was built and set up in a way that when it came together in a general election, Obama was a rocket ship that couldn't be stopped. And what happened with Biden's late decision was the campaign was never geared up to do any of this. They had lost all that muscle memory, and then said, with 100 and something days to go, hey, we're handing you the baton. Good luck. Which is, when you look at it and you look at the Pew poll, it just says that it was that not having the 2 years to build that organ. If he had been the bridge, said, I'm only running for one term, we're going to have a big fight. And by the way, I think Kamala Harris still might have won that 2-year fight for the nomination. She would have been a better candidate for doing that. but also the muscle memory of a very different organization that understood how you identify and turn out your weak voters would have made a big difference. These guys who are like, who've never been in a campaign, but can pull out a calculator, crunch a number.
It's the inverse of what you said at the top, right? It's the message that wins New York City is not the message that wins nationally, but the tactics that win you an Iowa primary or a New Hampshire primary are the tactics and the muscle memory, like you said, that actually win you a presidential. So
or a statewide Senate campaign or governor's race, or because this would happen. Like if you think about it, if you look at like Iowa is a great example of this. When you have 9 candidates coming through Iowa and building organizations in Jones County and Ottumwa and Cedar Rapids and Waterloo and Dubuque County and all those places, Davenport. You're talking to somebody who I was organizing in Monticello and Anamosa, Iowa. When I left, there were people, Iowans, who were Democratic, who had literally been working working for me and with me in that county. And over time, we actually created, Obama won Iowa. They made him our nominee, essentially. But when you withdraw, in other words, when you stop having primaries or caucuses in those states, then what happens? Well, Iowa's become, we abandoned it. We didn't go. We didn't have we changed it and moved it. It wasn't first anymore. And then 2, we didn't do any organizing or anything else. And guess what happens? Iowa becomes red. There's every one of those Democratic campaigns that's running around 50 states trying to win that nomination builds a stronger party in every one of those states. And then you have a general election, and you have people in those states who understand hard count, soft count, how you do it, how do you identify them, how do you get them out. Now, instead, we've gone data analytics. That'll tell us. In fact, we don't need to send Obama to Michigan because it's in the bag according to data analytics, and we don't build the organization. And Biden actually handed off literally nothing in that regard to Harris. She had no chance to reach those 72% of voters that said they would, if they had voted, they would have voted for her. She had no chance to get them out. We didn't have anything, right? And that's where I do like when I get pissed at at all that was they're just out there beating their chest about what an amazing organization they had built.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
Well, man, that is a very good place for us to wrap up today.
Well, thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for listening to that Trippi show. Join us at says.us. It's a civil social network for real human beings. And more importantly, I keep telling this to people, the other platforms, X, Facebook, all of them, are responsible for literally amplifying the division and, bots attacking. You don't even know if you're debating a bot or not or who's attacking you. That is destroying our democracy. And we need to build our own social network for real people. Where that there's no bots, and the algorithm is promoting civil conversation, not personal attacks. So I hope people get it and start to sign up for Says Us. It's on Android, Google, and Apple app stores. And we'll be posting more over on our Substack at Trippi's Take. Alex and I both just wrote pieces over the last few days, and we'll be doing it more weekly. So go check that out at joetrippi.substack.com. This podcast will always be free and is part of Lincoln Square. So check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media. They also are trying to promote other shows, other voices. It's important that we continued to build the momentum of the No Kings protests, and that we start aiming for an even larger one coming up here shortly. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about the specific dates and times and all that stuff soon. But again, it's about building it one person at a time. Go find somebody else, get them to listen, get them to find another person to help, to join us. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippyshow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone, for giving us a listen.